tell you who Travis is in case you don't know. If it's your first year here like me, then you've probably just met him. So he's been the organizer of, or an organizer of the WordPress KC Meetup since 2013, and an organizer of WordCamp KC since 2014. The simple word organizer doesn't capture all of what Travis does to make WordCamp a success in every single year. Simply put, Travis has been the heart of all things WordPress in Kansas City, so thank you, Travis.
Thank you, whoever wrote that. It wasn't me. Trust me, I would never say that about myself. I'm more self-deprecating. Anyway, so everybody, welcome. Who in here attended the SEO sessions yesterday? Okay, don't expect this session to build on those. This session is more geared towards I'm a small business and I know I need to create SEO valuable content. How do I do it without overwhelming myself? So, as was mentioned, my name is Travis Pflanz. I've been with the WordPress community here in Kansas City for a long time. You can follow along and share any resources that you may have about what I talk upon. Use the hashtag #StartWithSearch to join in on the conversation. Any questions that you have after this session as well. I will actually be in the Community Support Lounge at 3 p.m. right after this session, so come see me there if you have any additional questions. I prefer to take questions throughout the presentation, but I'm going to start by telling you I have a one-thing rule. So I judge my success on this presentation if one person comes and tells me that they learned one thing today. So sorry for the other 49 of you, if that's not you. Also, I always like to tell you to try to find one thing from this presentation that you can take and implement right away. No matter how small it is, just one thing. I feel like one thing is worth going out on my time. Hopefully it is for yours as well. As I mentioned, participation points. Please, if you have any questions or you want to add it to the conversation, do it throughout the presentation. Don't hold it for the end. I'm pretty good at moving on if somebody tries to monopolize my presentation, so don't worry about that. And if you don't participate, this is going to go through in like 5 minutes probably, and you're probably going to be super bored, even if you do learn that one thing. So who am I? I'm an SEO and content strategist. I recently started a new company called Search Centered Digital Marketing. I closed down my small web development company that I opened in 2004 because I wanted to get more niche focused on customers who are actually searching for search engine optimization services rather than selling my biggest service as an add-on to a smaller service. Instead, I flipped it around. This is my biggest service, and then I'll sell websites or social media marketing as the add-on instead. It's a lot easier that way. I am, as mentioned, co-organizer of WordCamp Kansas City, WordPress KC, and I like dogs. You'll see all of my dogs throughout the presentation. Corey Morris, damn him, stole my thunder yesterday with all those puppies opening up yesterday. But you'll see all of my dogs who are all senior dogs today. So you got puppies yesterday, senior dogs today. I also, how much do I like dogs? I am a lead organizer of the Kansas City Dog Club, which is a social club. We get together, do all kinds of fun things with our dogs. I've been a volunteer at Wayside Waif since 2010, and I am a member of the advisory council at Spay and Neuter KC, and I help run their pet food pantry program there to help families and dogs in need. So that's me. If you want to get up and leave because you hate dogs, go ahead, but you'll be weird. So, one thing that I always like to mention, and as I said initially, this presentation is geared towards that business owner who just now has that website or just now realizes that they need to create the content for their website. So we're not going to go through all that data and all those tools that you learned about yesterday. We actually are going to go through zero data, zero tools. Well, I shouldn't say zero tools, a few tools, but maybe to use in a way that you haven't used before. But starting out with SEO content really isn't that difficult. I think a lot of new website owners hear SEO content and they think that it's something different than what they're already creating or what they're capable of creating. And that's not true. So don't overthink it. Remember, you are the expert in your business and your industry. That is something that's super important that I think a lot of small business owners forget. Also, if you're new at it, fake it until you make it, okay? I'm going to give you some tips to create that content. So even if you are just starting out in your industry and you don't have, hundreds of clients and you haven't written hundreds of pieces of content, you'll be able to fake it so nobody else can tell, okay? So one of my big focuses is I hate the term blog. Does anybody else like the term blog? Does anybody hate the term blog? All right, so we've got a dozen or so people who hate the term blog. Nobody likes it, right? I think it's got a bad rap because we all think of it as, the online diary from the mid and late 90s and evolved from there. Just remember, with WordPress, a blog and a page are pretty much the exact same thing as far as the search engines and as far as users are concerned. The big difference, of course, in WordPress is that the biggest difference is that the post has a date on it. So if you just think of them as the same thing whenever you're writing content, I like to focus on evergreen content. Show of hands, who creates evergreen content or who knows evergreen content? Got a handful? Okay, good. Evergreen content, the idea is that this is content that is always relevant. I'm not a subscriber to that this content never changes, but the whole theme and topic is going to be relevant forever. I'm not somebody who is going to blog on industry news and changes as they happen, but you can create evergreen content around the entire theme and the history of whatever topic you're talking about. We'll get into that a little bit more here. When you're starting out, ignore your own insecurities. And if you know what I'm talking about here. Who have to themselves thought, I'm not the most knowledgeable on my own business topic, subject matter. Or, hey, all this content that I've been told needs to be written, it's already been written by somebody else. I can't do a better job, so why bother? Or maybe your business is boring to the average person. Or do you think nobody cares about that content? Ignore all of those. Those are your own insecurities. That's not the way your potential customers and the searchers are actually thinking about you, your business, or your content that you're creating. So I'm going to get right into it, okay? Let's talk about where to start. This is what I actually kind of have all of my new retainer SEO clients do. We sit down together and we make a list of all services and products that they offer. Again, we're talking in the usually small business space here. If you have even a website that sells thousands of types of widgets, that may be a bit much. But somebody throw out what is your business? What types of services and products do you sell? Financial. Where is that?
Right here.
Financial planning. Okay. So that's kind of one umbrella term, right?
That's the big umbrella.
That's a big umbrella. And then you have tons of different sub-services, sub-products. What are some of your sub-products that go under that umbrella?
Divorce planning.
Divorce planning. And then what's the subtopic of the divorce planning?
Subtopic of it would be college planning for divorced families.
There you go. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying make a list of all the services and products you offer and the sub-services. A client that I took on not too long ago was an interior designer. She did both commercial and residential. She was like, well, that's what I do. She thought that was her service. Well, how many of you live in an open space home? That's right, with the open walls, no walls, everything's one. You got one hand back there. Well, if you all live in those, you know that the acoustic design is also kind of important. The lighting design is going to be a little more different and difficult than rooms that have all their walls. Same thing with the commercial space. You have not just the design of the layout of the product, but you also have to consider acoustics in restaurants, which is something I feel like is going way down and paying attention to that. Who's been in that restaurant that's super loud with 5 people in there because it's concrete floors, steel ceilings, brick walls, right? So those are all the types of things that you can come up with. And as you start listing your services, you'll realize that, hey, you know what? These are things that I provide whenever I am providing this service or this product that are add-ons. Don't think of them as add-ons. Think of them as a product or a service themselves. One of the big ones, happened there?
Okay, time's out.
We had 3 times last time.
Okay. I don't know what this should, yeah, whatever. Okay, so the next thing that I usually have all my clients do is list 25 plus questions that you answer all the time for potential clients and customers. You know what they are. Trust me. How many of you have sat and talked to a client for an hour and a half and you had that exact same conversation 2 weeks ago and that almost same conversation 3 weeks ago, but you changed it a little bit? Remember, you know all the questions that are going to be asked. Write those individual questions down. And also realize that you actually are answering a ton of questions before they're ever being asked. And you have to be able to separate those and understand that those are questions that you are answering that aren't even being asked yet, right? So keep that in mind. And also, remember, this is something that I would say about 10 years ago that clicked in my head. And I was like, oh my goodness, I have been writing for colleagues. I have not been writing for potential clients and customers. Remember, you're not trying to show your colleagues how smart you are. You're not trying to give tips and tricks to them necessarily. But just always remember that any content that you're creating needs to be focused towards a potential customer or client. And if you just make that mindset switch, it's going to make a difference for you. Does anybody else experience that problem? Where when you sit down and you're like, who is this content for? Got a couple head nods. Maybe y'all are really good at this stuff. Oh, look at it, got cut off there. So, what to do? What to do with that, all of that information you've just written down. So just by writing this stuff down, you've got 50 topics already for Evergreen Content, right? Theoretically. Who's got the list of 50 in front of them right now? Or if I give you an hour, who could have that list? See? Look, half of the room raised their hand, and in an hour you can come up with that list of 50 topics. So whenever you have those topics, some things to consider while you're writing your content. What is it? And I don't mean that just on the surface level, but in depth. What is the history of the product, the service, the background? How is it useful? How does it work or function? Who needs it? Why do they need it? I always say, if there's a relevant graph or chart from a resource that's much larger and more reputable than you, include it in there. Cite them, of course. Don't steal it, but cite them. Because graphs and charts prove what you're saying, theoretically, right? And then also include both industry terms and layperson terminology. This is something that's, I believe, is a huge, huge factor. Remember, whenever people are searching for your products and your services, you don't know exactly how knowledgeable they are. They may be trying to solve a problem, which is, in my opinion, one of only 2 reasons that we use the internet, to solve a problem and to entertain ourselves. So, yeah, who's in the entertainment website industry? Nobody in here. Okay, good. So this is going to be a lot more relevant and easier for you to do. But just remember, everybody's always trying to solve a problem or answer a question. It may be that their problem is they need a new blue polo. Sorry, it's in the corner of my eye. You know. But we're always, with our content, we're trying to answer the questions that people are asking. That's why they're searching, right? So just remember that and be very upfront with that with yourself whenever you're creating the content. More of what to do. So whenever I am creating content, I always try to make sure I work in at least 3 pieces of other related topics, services, or products that I offer. I'm not saying go in depth, but just work them in naturally into the content. I also say, while you're writing, not inside your content, and maybe I should put this bullet point on a different slide now that I look at it, but as you're writing, you're going to come up with tons of other ideas for more content. So keep that list going. And as you see, I say, for additional 2,000 plus word articles. That's the number that I recommend trying to hit. 2,000 words per article. I'm sure somebody talked about that yesterday. Yes? You see some head nods? No?
Yeah.
So,
Minimum 250.
250?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was told 2,000 and 3,000.
Yeah, so shoot for 2,000. The reason is that most of the very large data clearinghouses will say that the top results on Google search results are in that 2,000 plus word range. So shoot for that. If you can't get there, don't give up on that piece of content. Don't not publish it. Publish it and come back to it. We're going to talk about how to do a little bit of research later, but we're not going to go through any tools because we're trying to make this simple for ourselves. And then also, think of a simple service or product to go with whatever that piece of content may be. If you are writing a page for a service that you offer, again, we've already talked about other services, but if you're writing a blog post or an article that answers a specific question, somebody throw out a question that is asked all the time by your potential clients and customers.
Do I need to be on social media?
Do you need to be on social media? Okay, there you go. So what is a simple service that you can include in a call to action for that? So something that's going to take you 1 to 2 hours, something that's going to take you 15 to 20 minutes that you can charge an hour to 2 hours worth of work for that somebody else is going to see value in.
Jetpack.
Huh?
Jetpack.
Installing Jetpack? That may be the case. But that's something that I always try to work in for clients as well, especially if they're service related. What is something that literally takes you 10 minutes that somebody would be happy to pay 2 hours worth of work for? And they just click a button, fill out a form, and you can do it super quick. Sean Nicholson yesterday talked about monetization. That's another way that I like to monetize my blogs. Just find something that I know I can do quick, write a long blog post with it, and after time, it'll start generating revenue on itself. You won't have to touch it. After time, of course. 3 internal links. I always recommend at least linking from within your article to 3 other related pieces of article, at least on your website. And again, we're talking simplicity here. We're not going super in depth. And then also 1 to 2 external links to industry relevant resources. Because, as I'm sure you all know since you're in here, right? The search engines like to see that you are who you say you are, that you do what you say you do, and that you know what you say you know. Part of the way you do that is linking to your own content that is relevant to the content you're writing. And another way to do that is linking out to external content that is relevant to the content you're writing. There are varying thoughts on how much each one of those weights have, but this is a process that I use and I find it extremely successful. Some more how to do it. So that's no beard. That's no beard at all. I just forgot that. So that was even last summer. That wasn't even that long ago. How to do it just right. I really think that Nike has like the best slogan ever. Just do it. Stop thinking about it. Just do it. I should also mention that my slides are already out there. I did forget to say that. My slides are out there. They're on Twitter. They're actually on the session page for today, as well as another blog post that's related to here. It's going to be on that session page and on Twitter both. Shoot for 2,000 words. We already talked about that a little bit. And take notes for your future pieces of content. Trust me, if you sit down and you say, you know what, I have a topic, I have a theme, I know I can write 2,000 words on it, you're going to get a ton of more ideas if you just sit down and you just do it. You're going to get a ton more ideas of future pieces of content. Always take those notes, have that list, so you're ready to go whenever you feel inspired to write again. Because that is part of the process and the problem for us as small business owners too, right? Just having that inspiration. So while you're getting that inspiration as you're writing, include that inspiration if it is absolutely relevant to the piece of content you're creating. Include them as small sections, a paragraph or 2, and then come back to it later, and you can break out that paragraph and create its own piece of content from there. That is something that is extremely valuable. If you get that 1 or 2 really long pieces of content to start with, it's obviously probably already going to be broken up into different sections based off of the 10 or so bullet points we had earlier, right? So if you can then create small sections within each large piece of content, it does multiple things, right? If you have the headings, headings inside of those sections. It goes then further to create that outline for the search engines to say, this piece of content is about this major theme, and these are all bullet points basically inside this theme of this content topic. So, be thinking about that. Work those in there even in the simplest form. That will already get you started on your next piece of content. That one's big, and I like that one. She's probably looking at somebody else's hand. She doesn't care about me. She only cares about treats. So here we're going to get into some of the tactical things that I think I would say most websites I believe are missing, and probably almost all small businesses are missing. Who on their website leaves the comments section on their blog posts? Only a couple. So even major websites and major news outlets have started turning off the comments section. I don't know if they're worried about trolls, spam, whatever it may be.
When you talk about leaving the comment section on, is that like leaving it to where it's automatically posts, or where it gives you the option to moderate? Because I have mine as option to moderate.
Yeah. So definitely moderate. Definitely moderate and turn on the email notifications. That's what I do. Also, something else that I recommend when it comes to the comments, if you're using one of those third-party comment systems like Discuss or even Jetpack, figure out whichever your favorite one is, how it's loading into the web page. If it's loading into an iframe, you're not getting any like SEO value from those contents on the page. But valuable comments that are actually published to your blog post, your blog article, can add value. Those questions and your responses to those questions will then also trigger results in search engines. So what I do is I leave the vanilla comments, just the built-in WordPress comment system on. I moderate, and I actually moderate every comment. It can be a little cumbersome at times, but if you set it up as part of your daily or weekly routine, you don't have to approve them all at the same, or one by one as they come in. If you have a commenter who's regular, who always leaves good comments, that's fine. You can whitelist them with certain plugins or within some of the settings.
Just raise my hand.
Right behind you.
No, I'm
Okay, cool. So we'll go through, so this section is where I'm going to give you some tools. So some other things that you can do with the comments, and this is extremely valuable, is don't just say, thanks for the comment, here's a 2-word answer. But with those comments, if they are good comments, or questions, you can take those comments and questions, do further research, and then redevelop, or not necessarily redevelop, but add on to the content that you've already written. So use those questions, because those are questions that you're not addressing, obviously, because somebody else asked them, and then you can add that back into your article to make it more robust, more in-depth, right? And so the other thing that I do here is anything that appears to be a useless comment or not relevant, like those, hey, great posts, thanks for the post. I always reply to those via email. I just do a reply in the email, and I say, hey, thank you so much for the comment. Thank you so much for the comment. Let's connect on LinkedIn. Build the network somewhere else. But I don't publish that to the blog post because it didn't add any value. And so the more useless words that are on your page, the less dense with useful information it's going to be. So approve useful and relevant comments and questions, reply to them in depth, and then rework your piece of content to include that question and answer. Anything that doesn't add direct value, just reply via email and say, thank you so much, I appreciate it, and follow them on Twitter or something like that. So let them know that you still saw value, that they read your article, but it's not going to give any SEO value to your piece of content. So be polite, but move on. I even approve comments that disagree with me too. I have a blog post that is all about why your Google reviews go missing. And I found 25 reasons that are legit. And then I kept getting comments and questions about the conspiracy theory type things, right? So I was like, I am so sick of getting all these questions about the conspiracy theories that are just so asinine. So I just wrote up an entire, here are the conspiracy theories section, and made it very clear that I don't subscribe or believe to any of these, but these are the questions that I keep getting. These are the things that people keep telling me that have not been substantiated. And I actually get lots of searches that end up landing on that page for those conspiracy theory type terms too. It's pretty funny, and that did add some value in that case. Some more how to do it. That's my little sausage, or I call her sweet potato, because she's shaped like a potato, but she's very sweet. So the comments, here are some comment plugins that I recommend. And as I mentioned, this link to this blog post is on the session page on the WordCamp KC website. Yoast Comment Hacks. This is a simple plugin. It doesn't really have a lot to do with SEO, actually, even though the Yoast SEO plugin, we all probably talked about that multiple times this weekend, right? Yoast Comment Hacks will let you redirect a first-time commenter. So you can redirect them to a page to subscribe to your newsletter, follow you on social media, etc. Just a thank you for making your first comment page. You can set a minimum and a maximum comment length, so you can get rid of potential, those potential, hey, great article stuff. I set it at like I think 25 characters, so it's still pretty short, but I know great article, great post isn't going to make it through. They need to add some more value. And it gives you an error message. You can send an error message. Like, hey, thanks for reading, but please leave a comment that adds to the conversation. So I really like that one. It's very simple. It's not really super SEO valuable though. Comments approved actually is. So one of the big downfalls I think of the WordPress platform, with their comments enabled, people don't get notified when their comments are approved when you have it on moderation, which is super frustrating. Why allow me as the website owner to moderate comments, and you're not going to let the person know if I approve their comment? So comment approved simply does that. You can set up a message to be sent. The value there is just going to keep people coming back to your website. And obviously, the more times and the longer people spend on those web pages, Google sees that as a ranking factor. So time on page, etc. Subscribe to comments reloaded. So you can actually allow people to subscribe to the comments on the article they're following, which is something else to me is super annoying. WordPress doesn't have it built in. So if somebody is joining in on the conversation, chances are they want to know what other people are saying, or when you reply to their comment, right? So this allows you to set that up, and you can get much more about SEO plugins actually here at this link, which is on the WordCamp website. Do we have any comments about questions, or comments about comments, or questions about, you know what I mean? Who uses a methodology similar to this? Nobody. All right. So at least, hopefully, you all took at least one thing already, right?
Did you spell search wrong in the?
Yes.
Oh. S-A, you just wrote.
I don't even see it right now.
Searchcenter.com.
Oh, that sucks.
Don't click it.
Remember what I said earlier about don't worry about your own. Yeah, it's fine. So anyway, so that link is everywhere else too. So you're probably not even going to click on that one. So how to do it? Some more how to do it. Some big points that I always like to mention. Some more big points. Revisit your content regularly. Even if it's an evergreen piece of content, keep coming back to it. One of the things that's going to help you remember to do that is turning the comments on. But on a monthly basis, I try to revisit most of the content I've written. Even if not on a 3-month rolling scale, I'll try to go revisit that content. We'll make sure we make improvements to that content based on the questions and comments.
Yeah, what would be your definition of evergreen content?
Evergreen. So, like for example, you could write evergreen content about the changing Google algorithm, but I wouldn't necessarily write a small piece of article about every single update as it's released. So like a news snippet. I wouldn't write that type of content. But if you're writing a piece of content about the Google algorithm changes, keep adding on to that and making it bigger. So what is your industry, your business, your website?
Consultant,
What industry?
business,
general business consulting. So, so for example, something that we see a lot of is like trends in 2019 for small business owners to take advantage of fill in the blank, whatever it may be, small business loans. So even though that you're writing this for 2019, that could be an evergreen piece of content forever. So rather than thinking of it as just for 2019, update that for 2020, update that for 2021. So you're still updating that same piece of content. So even though it's not 100% always relevant for infinity, but that one piece of content is going to be so much more valuable for you to have, trends in small business loans page that you update each year to meet the current trends, rather than doing a 2018 trend, 2019 trend, 2020 trend. Because in 2025, nobody is searching for 2018 trends, right? And even if they are, you don't care. That's not your niche, right? That's somebody doing research to write their own posts. So that's kind of my different take on Evergreen than some people, is that you could have a trends post or something like that, but keep it evergreen by updating the content rather than having one piece of content that never changes. Is that it? Yep.
Would you republish it?
You're getting right there. You're getting right ahead of me. Gotcha. So yes. So as you're revisiting the content, improving the content based on comments, questions. There you go. Trends even. Make sure you update screenshots and images. So if you're writing a how to do something post, no matter if you're selling products or services, whatever it is, make sure you have the most up-to-date, or hopefully one of the most up-to-date versions of what you're telling people how to do, right? Replace broken links, both externally and, hopefully none of your internal links go broken, but whenever you're checking links, there are plugins that can help you do this, or other services, even Google Search Console can help you find your broken links and help you repair them.
When you republish your content, do you put a new title with it or just a new date?
It depends. So to answer both of these questions at the same time, whenever you make updates to your content, I always recommend changing it to today's date. So whatever date you're making those updates. And that's because Google likes fresh content. Even though you didn't write a brand new piece of content, you still freshen that content. And also, searchers, if you're on your blog post and you have it to where it shows the date snippet there in the search results, you'll see that it says the date it was last updated or the date it was published. Are you more likely to click on something that seems relevant that was published in February 2019 or in March of 2012? Right? So that's more of a little bit of a psychology to that too as well. So if we're talking about like a trends post or like best plugins for 2019 and it's almost 2020, I would say on your slug, just call it best plugins for fill in the blank, whatever it is. Don't put a year in your slug, but change the year in the title, it's fine. And it'll be re-indexed by Google with that title. But then you also got to think if you want to do the on-page title, that you're entering into the top of, into the WordPress page title or your SEO title as well. Me personally, I only put dates in my SEO title and the other way around. On my page title, not my SEO title. I guess that's not 100% true. It just kind of depends. It kind of depends on that. But don't put a date in your slug. Is kind of what I'm getting at with those, mostly. All right. Is there any other? Did I miss a question on this? Here we go. I got two. Okay, sorry. This lights right there.
Related to keeping content fresh, is it better to do shorter posts and post every week, or a longer post and only once a month?
So, better. I always am going to say create the longest content possible. However, as you asked, if you can only come up with 600 words right now and you feel like it's a fairly well-rounded post, publish it and come back to it and add the content as you get more ideas for it. So does that it? Yeah. I got one back here.
Yeah. So I'm doing a lot of the republishing and updating the date to the current date. So what if like, say I do it a lot on blog posts, maybe that I wrote in 2017,
Mhm.
and there were comments.
Mhm.
Should I leave those comments on there, or? get rid of
Yeah,
them?
if they're valuable, leave them on.
Okay.
If they're valuable and relevant, there's no reason to remove them. I'm a fan of organizing them so newest comment is first rather than last. So it will then push those comments down into the next page. And if I'm not mistaken, out of the box, I use some other tools too, but I think out of the box, WordPress won't index your page 2, 3, 4 of comments. I may be mistaken. I may do that with Yoast or another plugin, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
So when you're republishing Evergreen, do you leave it the same title, or can you do you redo the title of the piece?
If the piece changed enough to where you need to change the title, like other than just like dates, you can play around with it and do some kind of A/B testing if you like. But I didn't get too in depth into this, but studies show that it takes about 18 to 24 months for Google to properly rank a piece of content. So, you may not see, if your piece of content is still fairly new, if you know it's in depth and it's complete, it can take 18 to 24 months for it to be ranked where it should be ranked. That said, if it's not already ranked pretty high, don't get upset if you're making a change, you don't see any difference or just minor, because it's not necessarily ranked where it should be yet. Once you start seeing that traffic, that's where little changes can make a difference. And I actually saw that with a blog post that I had this asininely long title. It's just something you should never have, theoretically. I changed it to make it more relevant, more concise, and my traffic went way down. Like, this was a title that was literally cut in half by the way it was displayed on Google search. And so I was like, oh, well, that was definitely the title because it was the only thing I changed. So I turned it back into this title that's like twice as long as it should be. And within the next week, my traffic jumped right back up. I don't know how to explain that. And there are some things that I honestly don't have enough in-depth data, and my company's not large enough to be able to, test hundreds of thousands of pages with, millions of search results and hits. But, for example, Jim Grant, who's an organizer here and spoke earlier, he's got a page on his website about WordPress hosting that literally has like 3 words on it. And if you're in Southern Johnson County, it's like the first thing that pops up when you're looking for WordPress hosting. He's like, I'm not touching it because it generates revenue, but I have no idea why it generates anything. So, fickle beast. I saw some more hands, but I don't remember where they were. Oh, right here we go.
Yeah, if you're already ranking with keywords, even if it's not really high yet, would you at least still keep the same URL, even if you wanted to change the title?
Yeah, so I would, so good question. So even if I'm changing the title, and if it's still obviously in the same theme of the topic, I don't touch the URL. Even if I change the on-page title, the SEO title, I don't touch the URL once it's been indexed. Especially if it's under a very similar piece of content, structure, theme, all that kind of stuff. Go. All right, so here we've got a few easy tools for non-writers. This is something that I deal with clients all the time. They're like, well, I want to contribute and I want to help write content, or people I talk to, they're like, I want to write, but I have no idea how to write. I've never been able to write. I can't sit down. I just get dead with the white screen. So some of you may find value in these, some of you may not. But stop writing, start talking. Google Keep Notes. Does anybody use that app on their phone? Like, it is such a good voice transcriber. Just open it up, start a new note, hit record. It does a pretty good job, even whenever there is somebody across the room having a conversation. So you can just start talking into that. Voice recorder. Ask your clients if you can record the conversation while you're talking to them. You will be surprised how many topics for in-depth conversation that you had right there. I don't know how fast you talk, but sometimes you can come up with 5 or 6 blog posts just within an hour consultation with a client. I don't know why I'm assuming everybody's doing services. I didn't see many hands whenever we talked about products, but have a colleague or coworker interview you. That way, Put the pressure on them. Find somebody who wants to help you out. Be like, come up with some questions if you were buying the service or looking for the service. In case you don't have enough leads coming in yourself to be able to get those from actual legitimate potential clients. Does anybody else have any tools or methods they use?
Right here in Microsoft Word, especially in 360, has a dictate button. You can just click
Yeah.
on that and start
There you
talking
go.
to it.
Actually, Word's had it dictate
Yeah.
for a long time since
I think they've improved on it.
Windows XP.
It's also in Google Drive too.
Google Drive, Google Docs has it built in.
I use the WordPress app on my phone to approve comments.
Okay, there you go. There you go. See, I've never even actually used a WordPress app. Don't tell anybody. Are you good? So here are a couple of recommended reading. And so, like I said, I didn't really give you that many tools to use, and we didn't talk about keyword research because when you're starting out, I think so many people get overwhelmed by doing that keyword research and finding out, what one slight different word is going to mean. Work it all into the content. Yeah, I mean, you know the questions people are asking you. You know your products. You know your services. Just don't be afraid to talk about them. Talk about them and write about them without doing that keyword research first. Because let's be honest, unless you get that foundation and you're actually have content that supports your services and products that you offer, it doesn't really do you any good to do that keyword research. Why start with that keyword research that's going to overwhelm you with thousands of results right away, whenever you already know what your customers and clients are looking for and asking. So, if you ever heard me present in the past 3 years now, you've heard of this book, They Ask You Answer. It's from 2016. In the gist of it, here we got a breakdown. Basically, the first half of this book is what is going to be extremely valuable for this purpose, for today's purpose. It talks about answering every single question imaginable that your potential clients could be asking. Marcus Sheridan owned a pool company during the housing crash, and he grew his pool business. People weren't able to pay their mortgages, and this guy grew his business building pools in the entire region on the East Coast because he developed a content strategy called They Ask You Answer. Wall Street Journal, I think it was, called it revolutionary. How is it revolutionary? He's just asking the question that he knows his clients are answering the questions his clients are asking. And he found through his research that the top 5 types of questions: costs, problems, comparisons, best ofs, and reviews. So don't be afraid to talk about your competitors' products and services as well. I tend to stay away from that area myself more than anything. But depending on your industry, I mean, if you're selling a $250,000 in-ground pool, you might want to talk about how you're better than specific other big clients, right? Or big competitors. Go bigger, longer, and deeper with your content. The strategy is called Skyscraper Technique. Has anybody used this technique? Got a couple. I'm going to tell you, if you're just starting out, stay away from the second half of this technique that talks about link building. That is that is one thing that's always makes me laugh, is whenever a small business client comes to me, their small local client, they're like, I need to do link building. Well, is anybody not familiar with link building? Okay, basically reaching out to try to get links to your content on other websites, relevant websites. Unless your content is super deep and relevant and your entire foundation is built out, you're wasting your time reaching out to other people, asking them to link to your content, because it's a very, very low response when you're telling somebody else, hey, I got this content, I think you should put it inside your article. And then they look at your website and they're like, dude, that's 250 words and you have 5 pages on your website. That's not going to be valuable to them. So stick to the first half of this. Basically, what it says is outdo every competitor that you have for your question that you want to answer, right? So for your theme or your topic of your content, just put that into Google, read the top 10, 15. You know the things, once you read all of those, you know what they're missing in their content. You know that things that they may not be answering the same way that you would, but just go bigger, longer, and more in-depth than the competitors. And again, you can find the holes. You can find the holes that they have in their content too, and you can fill those holes. Because if you find a hole and you, as a professional, see the hole in your competitor's website, then you know how to answer that question that they're not getting that traffic for. So you're going to get that traffic. The other one, so I'm recommending, so here we go again, on this, it's 2016. So it's not necessarily, I always like to point out that this book was 2016. This article is 2016, last updated. And then the other one, build a gloriously tangled web. Topic clusters from HubSpot. This is 2017. So content that's older is not necessarily out of date with the strategies that they provide. And these are still the three biggest ones that I recommend implementing and that I implement with a very small client starting out. So pick a major topic or theme for content. Create an amazing piece of content around that. And then create very closely related content to that. And you can see very easily how they just kind of all link back and they're all around the same subject. So that's going to go to reinforce that your website is what you say it is about. That you know and you do what you say you do. And then just start finding places where that content naturally links all together to make that spider's web, to help that potential client or customer view you as an authority. So, you can do it. It's not hard. Don't get overwhelmed. Remember, you are the expert, even if you're faking it right now. You still have to fake it. Just do it. And let your own content and knowledge inspire future content. Your customers and potential customers actually do know best, because they're the ones that are searching, so you need to answer their questions. And then start with one great piece of content. Even after you've written that list of 50 topic ideas that we talked about at the beginning, just start with one. Don't get overwhelmed. Start with one, and then if you say, you know what, this is something I want to go on that one before you finish. Go along that rabbit trail, hole, trail, whatever it's called, before you move on to the next topic to start something else. It's okay. It's okay. If you can become an expert or reputable under one single topic, you can make an entire career around that if you do it right. Right?
So do you recommend if we have divergent topics, say I do websites
Okay.
and databases and content management systems. I'm
Okay.
just getting into WordPress. So that's one thing I do. I also do cooking and baking and recipes.
Those are two different sites.
That's what I was asking.
I don't even
It's
need to
like
do
you
the
put
rest of
those
it,
underneath it, yeah.
So,
So
go ahead.
just have them, no umbrella site, just standalone.
That's the way I would go with it. So, are you selling services and products in both of those realms?
Yes,
Then they're definitely two different websites because they're not related.
because I also do Uber and eBay and a bunch of.
Okay, so I would say maybe eBay and web design is the same thing because it's all about marketing and products online and services. But the cooking and those products they're two completely different industries. So here's where I want to go back to. Remember to write for potential clients and customers rather than colleagues. So if you like all of those things, find ways that you can wrap that into an own personal website about yourself. So have that be more of your journal or your blog. Nobody said they like that term, right? But at least then you can talk about it on a more natural level than if they were just business websites. Does that make sense?
So have my personal website as my.
Have your personal website
Together, but have those.
as like a catch-all. That's what I do. I don't do a lot with it, honestly, so if you go look at it, okay. So, do we have any more questions or comments? We're pretty close up again. We're right up against it. But are there any questions or comments to close us out? No? All right. So, you grab my business card, give me yours if you want to stay in contact. I'm at Travis Pflanz on all the socials. Connect with me on LinkedIn. And I will be down at the Community Support Center here in 10 minutes. So, thank you all very much. Thank you for coming to WordCamp. Make sure you come to the after parties because that's where you get the most value. Let's be honest. You could have just Googled everything I told you today. So come to the after parties, make the connections, and have fun. Thank you all.